eco scene in South Florida. We've seen an explosion of craft industry beers across the country, and many of them here locally are making the mark on this global business. To my right, I'm here with Pulkit Agrawal. You'll have to help me with that pronunciation. I am Robert Asencio, your host this afternoon, and I quickly want to talk about beer and tech. I like beer, I like tech, and I like food. So let's talk about you. But let me read first a little bit about you, Pulkit.
Sounds great.
Okay. You're from South Florida. You grew up in South Florida. You went to high school in North Miami Senior. You're a Harvard graduate. You majored in mechanical engineering. You went to California, San Diego to be exact. You started a company, a software company that serves the beer industry, and I want you to tell our audience about that. But then you brought your company to South Florida, right? And I'm really excited that you're here. All at 27 years old, your business is in 11 countries, am I right?
Yep.
Okay, so without further ado, let's tell the audience who Pulkit Agrawal is.
Nice. Well, thank you for having me, for sure. So, yeah, my name is Pulkit Agrawal. I am the founder and CEO of The Fifth Ingredient. Basically, our software system is called Beer 30, and it's a way for breweries to track their data from grain to glass. And so really what inspired this entire company, before I started this, I actually used to work as an engineer at Ballast Point Brewing in San Diego. So studied mechanical engineering at Harvard and was recruited to work for a brewery. And, most of my other friends and colleagues are going into big tech, going into finance, going into, other teaching jobs, et cetera. And so I thought it may be fun to work at a brewery, right? Very different. Check it out. And so it was great, did a lot there when it comes to the actual engineering side. And most people don't realize just how much science goes into making a pint of beer, right? And this is in all manufacturing in general, like the science, the engineering, the quality control, everything, where when you crack open that pint of beer or Coke or any other liquid, you want to make sure that it's very consistent.
And so stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Let's stop there for a second. Do you like beer?
Yeah.
Love beer.
Yes.
So can you tell when you crack open a beer that it's a good beer? By the sound?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that there's so many different levels of beer and what's good or bad, and everybody has their own flavor profile. And so as soon as you crack it open, there's a full spectrum of, over 300 data points that you can look at in order to quantify a beer. And so it's really cool. And so with that, when it comes to the quality control aspect, after I left the Ballast Point, I thought about consulting under the Fifth Ingredient brand. So the 4 ingredients in beer, for people who don't know: water, grains, hops, and yeast. And the 5th ingredient is data. And so the consulting aspect was to focus on helping breweries use their data to make better beer and to, really understand what's going on. But imagine going to a brewery and all of a sudden the head brewer gives you a notebook of paper logs, whiteboard, spreadsheets, and you're like, how do you consult on this, right? Like, think about that. Think about how intense that gets. And
did you experience that?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah. So that's actually a very common practice in the brewing industry. It's an industry that is, I would say, overall, a few years behind what the norm is when it comes to standard tech. And that's where Beer 30 really came about, which is I realized that there was a need in the market for having something that was very brewery oriented and really helping somebody brew better beer, but actually using their data to understand exactly what it means to go from point A to point B, from grain to glass, from the very beginning, the entire supply chain, and basically build out an ERP that doesn't require somebody to have a full accounting background in things, but can actually just be a head brewer, an owner, et cetera, and understand just how profitable and how their business is doing.
So if somebody wants to get a hold of, and while we're talking, right, search on the web, your company, The Fifth Ingredient. Give them the website.
It is www.thefifthingredient.com, THE5TH ingredient.com.
Outstanding. So let's talk more about this. So your startup was in San Diego? And how long were you in San Diego? And then why did you come back to South Florida?
So again, I grew up in Miami, went to Boston area and then San Diego. And so I lived in San Diego for about 5.5 years. Of that, I worked at Ballast Point for 2.5 years and then switched over to The Fifth Ingredient. And really the cool thing about San Diego is that at that point, it was the craft beer capital in the country. And so it was a really great place to start the business, which was, hey, let's build out based on the San Diego network, based on other craft breweries, things like that, just a a really cool way to network, right? And meet people and get validation. And this is like, those early stages where you're just trying to get people to look at your product and really, as an entrepreneur, focus on, is there a product market fit, right? Are people really interested in having this sort of tool and willing to pay for it? And so that's kind of where the San Diego journey started, and was very fortunate to meet a couple of awesome mentors along the way that have been guiding me and my business partner, Ryan Ellis, this entire time to grow our company. And so did that. And then COVID happened in 2020. And what was super interesting is that obviously for most restaurants and breweries, even, for breweries, keg sales are anywhere from 40 to 95% of their business. And so all of a sudden, not having kegs that are being sold led to a lot of our customers actually shifting towards can and bottle sales, right? And that was kind of a pivot that they all had to do. And at that time, they realized that they need a proper data management system to handle this, right? All of a sudden, you have orders coming in from different people. You're trying to track that quality control from all the different cans and things, and it just spirals. And so that's where it becomes really cool to think about how a software system ties in together to make this happen.
So for anyone that's ever tried to brew their own beer, and I've tried, and I think out of many times I've tried, maybe one time that I have something that I really liked. And I found it to be somewhat of a nightmare because I was going through recipes and then doing the brew and letting it sit and then remembering and writing stuff down. Man, I can't even imagine what it would take at a brewery.
I was going to say, now scale that up times like 10 people and scale that up to doing, barrels and barrels and liters of alcohol, just scale that up, right? And so imagine you're doing a batch and then not knowing on what day you're going to add in yeast, add in dry hops, right? And how that's all going to tie in together, how you're harvesting.
It gave me a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, imagine that where you did in your garage, just scale that up, multiple times.
So how do you create the software or this platform and not make it seem like it's driven by accountants so that those who are not accountants can use it?
Yeah, and I think this is a really cool point that I really value with entrepreneurship, and it's really understanding feedback. And that's feedback from customers and feedback from potential clients, feedback from mentors and everything. And it really comes down to understanding what software you're developing, right? So in our case, for example, we really wanted to be that a brewer is never locked out of brewing if they are in the software, right? So some of our competitors, for example, in the accounting world, if you don't have the inventory on hand, you basically lock people out of brewing. Right? Hey, you don't have grains listed in the inventory, you can't brew. Well, imagine you're a brewer, and at that point, you have hot water coming into your brew vessel. You're about to cut open a bag of grains, and all of a sudden, your data management system says, hey, you can't brew, go add in the inventory. It's very likely that you're not going to stop what you're doing, track down an invoice, track down the accounting team, and put that in, right? So from the brewer's perspective, having a software system built where they can go back in and adjust information, right? Or go back in and really dive in on making the end result, which is brewing and that good product, that's where things dive in. And so the feedback from customers has been phenomenal, where they're like, hey, these are the things we want to see. They're the ones that help develop a roadmap. And we're basically making changes multiple times a week in our system, all based on customer feedback.
So look, we talked about COVID, right? How COVID changed the market, if you will. Your clients went from kegs to beer, the bottles and glasses. We know that COVID is one of the byproducts of COVID has been really hitting the economy hard. South Florida is known, not excluded to hard times. We know that a lot of people in South Florida are underemployed, underpaid, and we're really looking at young entrepreneurs like yourself to come in and help stimulate the economy. So let's talk about you and your growth in Miami. Why did you end up in South Florida to begin with?
So I actually came back to South Florida at the start of COVID. My parents still live out here, wanted to be close to family at that point in March of 2020 when we didn't really know what was happening. And then at the end of November, I just figured it'd be cool to come back and work from here, right? Be closer to family. But then also Miami is coming up as an up and coming tech scene, right? And one of the coolest things that I really valued in the San Diego ecosystem was the entire entrepreneurship and startup community. And there's so many different events that I participated in. San Diego Startup Week. There's Product Camp San Diego, which I helped as one of the organizing team members for like an unconference of product managers and things. And so, just looking at that entire startup tech scene in San Diego, realizing that Miami is on the up and coming, right? With more and more companies coming out here, figured it could be a really cool opportunity to try and build the Miami community and Miami entrepreneurship scene here. Because exactly what you're saying is, when you're at that particular junction of, being potentially unemployed or underemployed and things, having the opportunity in a community system where you can make a post and say, hey, I have this tech background. Is anybody hiring? Or, hey, we're searching this person for accounting or sales and marketing and things. And having that portal and community where people are vetted is really helpful because everybody has that same end goal of just lifting everybody up and just trying to get the best out of all their different people.
You know, I mean, there's so many questions I want to ask you, but let's go back to the basics here. So if somebody wanted to work with you, right, or help you in your industry, what would they have to do? What qualifications would they have to have in order to be able to apply for a job?
Yeah, so right now we are in particular hiring for software developers, right? And so at that point, it really comes down to understanding what language skill set you have, but then also diving in more so on the way that you break problems down, right? And so in our case, the way we usually do it is, our developers right now, they actually start off as interns. And they actually came, one of them came from a coding boot camp actually in San Diego. And then we're able to take that and do an internship with us and become lead developers, right? Because over time, as they gain that experience, they're able to understand just how to break problems down and really understand how to execute on what the client wants.
So we're talking about people with coding background, right?
In particular for us right now, yes.
So and it's important to mention and note that South Florida tech scene has been here for a while. Now there's a lot of interest by our elected leaders who are very aggressively promoting the area, right? So let's talk about a comparison. San Diego tech scene, infrastructure, support infrastructure for companies, workforce versus the ones here in South Florida. How do we compare?
Yeah, so in particular, I think, San Diego, and I can only speak very detailed in San Diego because I was very much involved with that. And I'm looking to be far more involved in the Miami scene. But in San Diego, what was really cool was having, for example, a Slack channel where, there was in all of San Diego, but also greater San Diego. So that were there, all those different communities and different mini groups were able to come together for a centralized database. Right. And so that would be something really cool where I've seen, some of those things in Miami. And that's actually how Robert and I got connected through one of those channels. And just being able to really emphasize more of that and being more active in it, posting multiple times a week on different things that are happening in the community and really finding those key thought leaders like yourself that really want to see the entire community come together. And I think, just like San Diego has that, I think Miami is really up and coming with that as well.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I mean,
from your perspective,
from my perspective, it's been great. Where I came in at the end of November, I searched for 1 million cups because I had presented there in San Diego, got connected in Miami. All of a sudden from there was connected to 4 or 5 other people, Cafe Ventures Miami and a couple others. So definitely, I think Miami is really coming together for sure. And I think what's going to be really interesting is in the next year or so to see it go even further on, right? And where there's like a potential after COVID, like a potential San Diego Miami week, startup Miami week, right? Like similar to Startup San Diego week, and have, conferences and thought leaders teaching people about entrepreneurship, teaching people about running a company and things they learn and things that they wish they could have done better. And I'm really excited to see something like that happen in Miami in the coming years and really see that ecosystem come together where there are all these investors, there are all these VC firms, and really trying to build more of that community in Miami.
So would that help, say, grow your company?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the only way we've been able to get to where we are today, honestly, is having and being very fortunate enough to meet the right people in San Diego that were mentors for me and my partner, and being able to get their feedback and get their thoughts on it, get their thoughts on marketing and scaling and sales and things, and be able to use that in the way that we operate. And so having that locally in Miami with the talent and resources available here with universities. I mean, I've done stuff with UC San Diego, right? Doing stuff with University of Miami, Florida International University, and these other universities.
Are you doing anything with them?
I'm not right now, no.
And is the industry involved?
Sorry?
Is the industry involved in the universities?
Yeah, so there's a number of teaching programs, actually, brewing teaching programs. And so UC San Diego has a full teaching program. Irvine does.
How about locally here?
I'm not sure, actually. I think that there are some like local brewing programs that I've come across just through social media, but I'm not sure if University of Miami or FIU or any of them have like a proper brewing program, but that could be really cool to look into for sure.
Let's work on that. Let's make some phone calls. As a matter of fact, Saif Ishkal, I may have mispronounced his name. I apologize. He's over at FIU. He was named as Chief Tech Officer for the City of Miami, or helping the City of Miami, the mayor's initiative, grow tech. So he'd be a person, and he's on the chat group that we belong to, right?
Nice.
So I wanted to ask you though, as a business owner, what obstacles have you encountered?
Great question. I think the biggest obstacles that really come together usually tie in with just scaling, and tie in massively with just understanding what you can do to get the most bang for your buck as you hire the right people, and trying to understand as you're scaling who's fitting what particular position, right, and what he or she's skill sets are to really elevate them. And I think that's what our biggest obstacle has been, and it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, you could have a really poor business where you're not at the luxurious element of hiring people,
Mm-hmm.
or then it becomes great, like things are scaling really quickly. Let's start hiring the right people. And so that's actually the biggest obstacle, is finding the right people at the right time that can really fit into whatever it is that you need to do.
So workforce is
Correct.
part of the biggest
Workforce,
obstacle.
yes.
And again, your recommendation would be to have more an inclusive community, to create more coding boot camps, to ensure that the niche specific skills are trained, or people trained in niche specific skills. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just going back to high schools, right? Like when I was at North Miami Senior High, I was part of the International Baccalaureate program, but I was also part of the engineering society that they were bringing up. And being part of SECME and the science clubs, et cetera, that was phenomenal for me to learn really how to use a 3D printer, how to actually
Mhm.
build things out, right? And so even just looking back at our school systems and looking back at the way that those programs help people in their middle school, high school years really adapt and learn to what they're interested in, is super powerful for this.
So if you had to tell our audience, give them advice as to how to start their own business, how to get involved in the tech scene, what would be your advice?
I think the key takeaway is really figure out what the product market fit is and what's the problem that you're trying to solve. I think I've seen a number of entrepreneurs, and I personally do some entrepreneurship coaching with other people as well. And people coach me, and it's pay it forward kind of mentality. And I think the biggest thing that I've come across is people have an idea, but they haven't really proven a market fit, and haven't really proven if somebody's actually willing to pay for that particular idea and solution, right? And so I think that's the biggest advice, which is if you have an idea, start interviewing people, right? Start asking people. Before I even got to like a version 1, I launched an alpha version, hit up a couple brewing conferences and showed my software to, over 140 people across 80 different breweries, and was just like, hey, is this something you think would be interesting to you? Would you want to pay for it? Like, how much would you want to pay for it? Like, what are the value adds? And just doing that market research really helps solidify, is this something I want to pursue doing, right? And so I think that's the key to emphasize, which is if you have an idea, prove that people are willing to buy it, or prove that they're interested in it, and then start building from there. And take all feedback positively, and take all feedback with a grain of salt to be able to really keep adapting and improving.
Outstanding. And then so what about, let's talk about it. Everybody that starts in business generally says, I don't have enough money. Bootstrapping, right? They shy away from bootstrapping, or they wind up bootstrapping, but not to the level that they need to. But I think most people are generally concentrated on investors. Can we talk about like the difference of the two, the pros and the cons, and how long can you actually bootstrap before you need investors?
Sure. I think there's a number of schools of thoughts on this, and everybody has their own opinion on it. Personally, for us, it's a double-edged element, right? So the first thing is that fortunately we were in a position where we were able to bootstrap with our savings, and we're able to then actually prove a market fit where we had customers that started paying us, right? And that's where revenue started coming in. I think it really comes down to understanding, if you do get investors, what it is that you're giving up. And so this is something that we've thought about consistently, which is, you have some sort of valuation, you're giving up equity in it. And so if you look at it from a costing perspective on things, imagine I even get like a small brewery that signs up as a customer, right? And let's just say for math purposes, they're paying $200 a month, right? Even a small brewery like that. Well, in an entire year, that's $2,400. And from there, if you start looking at software companies and multipliers and things like that, even if we use like a multiplier of 4x, that's about $10,000 worth, right? So even just getting one brewery potentially increase my net worth for the company by $10,000, right? Now scale that up with the fact that there's 9,000 breweries in America. We're in across 11 countries. There's about 19,000 breweries globally. And in terms of market saturation, we're nowhere near an element of having market saturation. So it really comes down to understanding, well, if I'm taking a $100,000 check, $500,000 check, $1 million check, what am I giving up, and what is the opportunity cost there, right? And if you can, for example, grind it out, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you can grind it out and figure out how you can actually prove the market fit to get revenue in, investors themselves will come to you, and you will have a lot more negotiating power at that point, because you've proven that people want it, and everybody wants to, bet on the winning horse in a way.
So are you willing to sit down with a group of us to kind of work through these problems and maybe help others get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing that.
I like that. I'd be excited.
Absolutely. That's the only way that I was able to start, right? I had the right people that were willing to help out with things and really just interested in seeing that growth happen. And so absolutely, I love meeting other entrepreneurs, talking to them about their stories, their journey, and seeing however I can help, because that's how I've gotten to where I am today.
Outstanding. So let in the last 5 minutes that we have, 5 minutes, what do you want to tell people about you? What do you want the audience to know about you?
About me?
Yeah,
wow.
And your company and your goals. Because I'm. Let me back up before you answer that. Let me tell you why I ask. I'm extremely impressed at your age. I'm extremely impressed with your focus and what you've done so far. I'm looking at you as an older guy, right? I'm looking at you as the future of this economy. Young people like yourself, right? You guys will help us unscrew the mess ups that we created. So I want people to see Pulkit is a real person, and I want them to hear a little bit about you and what you want them to know.
Yeah. Great question.
Don't get shy. Don't get shy.
Yeah, no, great question. I think the biggest takeaway that I've had from my experience is, timing is everything when it comes to trying out new things and being very fortunate enough to have met the right people along the way. But I think it really comes down to understanding what your biggest strengths and weaknesses are and being able to really hone in on it. So as an example, one of my biggest strengths is taking a bunch of information and stimulus from other people, right? A bunch of noise per se, and figure out in that noise what's the actual signal that I care about, right? And so for me, I actually love hearing different opinions, as many as possible. And for me, there's no such thing as like too many cooks in the kitchen in that aspect, because everybody's able to contribute in some way. And so I think that's like a huge strength that I have, right? But on a weakness or thing that I can improve upon is sales and marketing, right? And I had to learn how to do sales because I'd never done it before. And now I'm having to learn how to do marketing, right? And that's something that is not a strength of mine. And so knowing that it's not a strength, I actually found other people that have that as a strength, right? Whether it's contractors, whether it's my business partner. And my business partner has a sales and marketing background, right? Along with a tech stack. And so I think the key is that, as you start this business or as you start different ventures, understanding your strengths, understanding your weakness, and being brutally honest about it and saying, look, this is where I'm going to excel at, and this is where I'm not going to be as powerful, and I got to find the right people to fit in, which, funny enough, ties in with everything we're talking about, the workforce, finding people with their strengths. And I think that's the key, is find the right people that can really help you scale and help you grow.
Outstanding. So let me ask you one last question. Politically engaged or checked out?
Okay. No, it's a combination, I would say. It's very much politically engaged in some aspects, which tie in with the business side of things and understanding just what the economy is going, what's happening with those aspects of things, for sure.
Okay. So my advice to you is stay as engaged as possible, because it is those elected leaders, whether local, state, or federal leaders, that come up with the policies that will affect you.
Absolutely.
Okay. And they need to hear from people like yourself. Remember, you are our future.
For sure.
I'm looking up to you, brother. I really am.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Having said that, want to give them a last parting word and how to contact you?
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, feel free to check out our website, thefifthingredient.com. I see the link in the URL below. More than welcome to shoot me an email, connect on LinkedIn, follow our social media, and really just check out everything that we have to offer when it comes to the brewing side of things. And if there's anybody listening to this that owns a brewery or invests in a brewery or things like that, feel free to reach out, and we can definitely chat about how our Beer 30 software can help you on the brewing side of things.
Having said that, I hope this has served as an education piece for everybody. And if not, hey, let's talk about beer and tech and eat some wings or eat some good bar food or restaurant food, right? But at the end of the day, we will get past COVID, and it is young entrepreneurs like Pulkit that we will be depending on to really move this economy forward. Thank you all for listening. Look forward to speaking with you in the near future. Bye.